For years, we've defended you. Now, we need you to listen. We Eastwoods have always lived next to the forest. That's what my mama taught me when I was young, and I never had any reason to disbelieve her. She told us all quite rightly that our family's special, always has been. Not because of who we are, but what we do and what we've been doing for as long as people settled around here. We, which is to say myself, my mama, and my 5 sisters, have spent our entire lives in our isolated little house on the edge of the forest, living off the water we gather, the food we farm, and the meat we hunt. This place has never had a formal name. It's always just been the forest, with big, important capital letters.
Its name doesn't matter,
Mama had once said.
Its real name hasn't been spoken in a human tongue for damn near 200 years. I don't see any reason to break that trend.
The only names around here are ours. Mine is Abigail, my mama's is Mary, my older sister, Anne, is 25, that's 7 years older than me, and the youngest, Lydia, is only 11. Eve, Hannah, and Joanna are somewhere in between. Yes, sir, the Eastwood Clan is strong and plentiful. We grew up together, taught one another, helped each other survive. Our names are important to us. It's what we still have once everything else is gone. And a person without a name can all too easily go missing from memory. It can be hard not to forget sometimes. You see a lot of Eastwoods vanish in the forest. It comes with the territory. The internet, Mama always told me, was a godsend. It's the closest thing to a formal education most of us have ever got, seeing as we've never really attended school. It's been a good distraction from all the boredom in times, and trust me, there can be plenty of it. Historically, we've been able to go through whole generations without anything major happening. While the rest are skeptical, I'm hoping that at least here I can tell our story. The story of the Eastwood family. A story that's worth remembering, no matter the ending. It's a memoir, maybe an epitaph, and almost definitely a warning. For everyone. It began about a week back. I was reading by lamplight at the time while Mama sat on an armchair across from me, darning a quilt with crooked old needles. Anne was cooking dinner, Lydia and Hannah were on the night's lookout, while Eve and Joanna got some sleep. They were up all night on lookout the day before. They deserved some rest. Joseph, who had been our last surviving brother, had been missing for months, presumed dead. We knew it'd mean that eventually I or one of my sisters would have to wander outside the fold and get ourselves knocked up if we were to continue the family line. Life here is more or less about romance and more about duty. The only love we could afford to have is familial, and even then you had to be ready to sever ties quickly. I think you'd go mad from the grief otherwise. The Eastwoods lived next to the forest, Mama once told me, to hold back the hunger. I'd never seen it in my lifetime, so some part of me was dubious as to whether it even existed. It seemed almost like a silly fairy tale people would tell their children at night to stop them from misbehaving or go out in the dark.
The hunger has existed since long before human beings walked this earth, Abigail,
Mama said, her knitted needles clicking together.
It's ancient and cruel, not to mention patient. It can go centuries without making a move, then come in all guns blazing. It'll take you by surprise if you let your guard down.
And we're the only ones who can stop it? I'd asked as a youngin', clutching my bed covers tight against me.
Not quite, dear,
she said, a crease of sympathy creeping across her stern face.
There's no stopping the hunger, not really. It exists in some small quantity in all of us, like a disease in the blood. It can only really be held at bay, and even then only for a time. It can get concentrated in some places, ugly places, like the forest. We're one of the 4 families in charge of making sure it stays there.
This was a lesson I'd had drilled into me throughout my childhood, the 4 families. We were the Eastwoods, the Northwoods, the Westwoods, and the Southwoods. We spend our lives maintaining the perimeter around the forest, making sure that nothing got in or out alive for the safety of everyone else. Thousands of people have gone missing in the forest over the centuries, maybe even tens of thousands. The hunger had taken them, Anne said. She'd seen it with her own eyes. She told me that once, before I was born, she saw the hunger take Dad. That's the one incident we were forbidden to talk about around Mama. She didn't like to think about what happened to Daddy. A minute or so later, Anne came into the living room huffing and puffing, her hair tied up in a ponytail. "How's that soup coming along, Anne?" I asked, looking up from my copy of Treasure Island. It's coming all right, just don't know when it'll be here." She laughed softly and sat down on the couch next to me. "You think Hannah and Lydia are all right?" I asked. "They've done it before, they know what they're doing," she said. "But Lydia, she's so young." "I trained her myself, Abby," Anne said wearily, cracking her knuckles. "She may be young, but she's a crack shot. She's more of a natural with a rifle than anyone I've ever seen before." The wind was howling outside the windows, causing them to rattle in their frames. It always put me on edge. It even made Anne look a little uncomfortable, but Mama just sat there, stoic as ever. Sometimes it's like she's made of stone. Then we heard the bell ring. Mama dropped her knitting and shot up from the chair, running up the stairs to the balcony without a moment's hesitation. If I wasn't necessarily scared before, I most definitely was then. Anne and I ran up after her, wanting to see what happened. The bell only ever rang when someone on the lookout pressed the button, and that meant that something was happening. Something big, and most likely something bad. "What happened, Hannah?" Mama was asking, her voice appearing frantic for the first time ever. Hannah was 15. She was small and rail thin, but a real tough cookie. You wouldn't know it if you saw her in that moment. She looked like a frightened puppy.
"There's lights, Mama,"
she said, passing over her binoculars.
"Lights in the tree line. Lots of them."
When Mama held the binoculars up to her eyes and squinted until the image came into focus, her face immediately fell. I saw her bottom lip quivering as she forced down an uncomfortable gulp. It took her a second to regain her composure, but finally she spoke.
"Anne, wake up even Joanna. Abigail, get the guns."
"Which ones, Mama?" I asked.
"All of them."
As Anne roused my two sleeping sisters, I ran into the storage room and started loading my arms with every rifle, handgun, and ammo belt I could get my hands on. There may only have been 7 of us, but we were armed like a small country.
"Eve! Joanna!" I heard Mama yelling. "Get the Browning and cover the front door. We're going to need to keep them back when they swarm."
I'd shoved a revolver into the holster on my hip and slung a semi-automatic rifle over my shoulder. My arms were full of rifles and shotguns as I ran back into the living room. Anne passed me on the way, going back to get more.
"Abigail,"
Mama said to me, her voice austere and cold.
"Go up to the top balcony. I'll meet you there. I'll need you to follow my orders exactly if we're going to make it through this night."
Mama grabbed a rifle, a handgun, and a sawed-off shotgun before running to one of the other lookout posts.
"They're about a mile off, Abby. I give them 10 minutes. Get into position."
We'd rehearsed it 1,000 times. When other little girls were playing house, I was training with a rifle from the sniper's roost. But this was the first time I'd ever needed to take that post with the knowledge that I may have to actually shoot something. Anne came back with another handful of guns and started shoving them into the various slings and holsters she'd adorned herself with. She must have looked like a hero from a bad action movie before the end. "Get into position, Abby," Anne said, loading a revolver. "The hunger's gonna be here soon. We can't let them things slip. Not now." I nodded, jogged from my stupor, and climbed the living room ladder up to the sniper's roost I'd trained in. The adrenaline coursing through me in that moment almost entirely canceled out the wave of terror that was crashing into my soul. The night air felt colder now, like an Arctic breeze. I couldn't tell if it was nerves or the temperature that was causing me to shiver when I took up my rifle. Either way, the effect was the same. It reduced my usefulness in combat. Just ahead, there was a moving, roiling constellation of light. Found myself wondering, was this the hunger? This huge, amorphous blob of darkness and its smattering of glowing freckles? That wonder was quickly disregarded when I looked at them through my telescopic scope. They were people. They just looked like people. All were dirty and haggard, some were clothed and others were simply naked. Some were dressed in more modern clothing, hiking gear, tattered business suits, ripped t-shirts and shorts. Others looked like they were dressed in Civil War era garb or old puritanical gowns. Some were even coated in various degrees of rotting human skin, such as one particularly tall and skinny creature that was wearing what I can only describe as a cloak made of sewn together human faces. Just the sight of it almost made me puke. I felt a presence behind me and turned to see Mama standing there with her sniper rifle. She had 1,000-yard stare as a legion of the hunger approached.
"Don't fire yet, Abby," she said, her voice toneless. "They may look like savages, but they're crafty. They'll send shockwaves to test the waters."
What do they want, Mama?
"To kill us, Abby. To kill us and take us. We're the only thing standing between them and the world right now, and even if we don't make it through this night, we need to take down as many of these bastards with us as we can."
I nodded and gulped. Then Mama did the same. When I looked again, I realized that many of the hunger were armed. Some carried farming tools like sharpened billhooks and sickles. Others were armed with homemade spears or bows and arrows, and some were even shouldering old-fashioned Civil War muskets. The myriad glowing lights were almost always either burning torches or oil lamps. Mama was right. They were here to kill us all. When they were uniformly no less than 100 feet away, the marching tide of the hunger just stopped and stared with dead-eyed cruelty. Their eyes, they had a strange flesh-pink glow to them.
"Girls!"
Mama yelled.
"Are you in position?"
"Yes, Mama!" called back 5 regimented voices.
"I couldn't be,"
Mama said, her voice cracking slightly.
I couldn't be more proud of you. Whatever happens, just know that I love you, and none of these soulless bastards can change that."
10 figures broke rank from the hunger and began walking towards the house. They were laughing, scraping knives together, swinging chains, knocking arrows. It looked like they'd crawled from the mouth of hell.
"Fire on my command,"
Mama yelled.
"Take out the ones with long-range weapons first. Ready? Aim! Fire!"
A litany of small explosions rang out, igniting the night. Bullets crashed into the hunger's first wave, eviscerating them. The shot I fired pierced the chest of the one carrying a loaded crossbow, flinging it off its feet. The second shot, fired by Mama, left it with only half a head. The hunger wasn't discouraged. Even the ones we shot went down cackling, as the great mass behind them laughed uproariously. Now that I could get a better look, they were easily a few thousand strong. Part of me wondered why they even bothered playing games with us like this when they could siege us easily if they decided to bum rush us all at once. "What happens next?" I whispered to Mama.
"If it's anything like last time, they'll send forward an ambassador, one of the more talkative ones. They'll set the terms."
Sure enough, Mama was proven to be right. The tide of the hunger split as a single figure walked forward, dressed in a mix of scraggly hunting gear and human skin tanned into a sort of leather. There was something familiar about the way it walked, the shape of its head, its scraggly beard, the way it carried itself. I think Mama realized it before I did.
"Dear God,"
I heard her whisper. It was Joseph.
"Eastwoods,"
The ambassador called up in a bastardized version of Joseph's voice.
"we can make this all so much easier for you. We can show you mercy."
You ain't got nothing for us.
I heard Anne call down to it. The hunger wherein Joseph grinned.
"Is that any way to speak to your brother?"
It said, cackling as its army joined in. "You're not our brother," I called out to it. "You're not anything anymore."
Don't be crabby, Abby.
it said.
I may not be your brother, but I've been in his head. You want to know what he dreamed about doing to you, Abby? What naughty thoughts good old Joe had about you?
Mama leaned forward and whispered in my ear.
Don't listen. He's trying to rattle you. He doesn't know anything.
Abby!
It taunted.
Climb down from up there and have some quality time with your brother. I want to see if you're a better fuck than Lydia.
I fired my rifle, and the shot went through Hunger Joseph's cheek. He, or I guess it, fell to the ground like a dead weight. Dead as a doornail. I turned around to Mama and couldn't place the expression on her face. I just didn't want to hear it talk in his voice anymore. Mama's face didn't change, but she nodded. She understood. The hunger was less understanding. I don't know if it appreciated me murdering its mouthpiece and destroying the one piece of emotional leverage it had over us. Now they had nothing but violence, and they had it in unimaginable quantities. What must have been a few hundred split from the horde and started charging in an unorganized rabble. They were chanting and screaming and ululating like maniacs, brandishing blades and clubs and firearms. Before, they were testing the waters, just like Mama said. But now, they meant business. They wanted us dead.
Eve! Joanne!
Mama commanded.
Open the front door! Give him hell!
The front door swung open the second the command was issued, followed by a satisfying click. The crowds, sensing a point of entry, began funneling themselves towards the open door. And then, the machine gun started. It was impossibly loud, but in that moment it was the most beautiful sound on earth. Bullets ripped and rendered, cutting down the hunger in hundreds. Rounds tore through them cleanly, decapitating and bisecting, collapsing ribs and crushing skulls. Blood soaked into the summer grass as the damned legions fell dead in the face of the machine gun's wrath. The rest of us began firing when the hunger had realized our trick. We lit up the sky, not wasting a single round as the army poured towards us. I didn't for a second believe that we could win. They outnumbered us perhaps 1,000 to 1. We killed like ancient warriors, slaughtering the hunger with grace and fury. I wasn't doing it for myself, truth be told. I wasn't even doing it for humanity. It was just my sisters. They were worth fighting to the death for. Holding knives and hatchets between their teeth, some of the hunger began scaling the walls of the house like spiders. I could see Ann and Hannah switching to shotguns and blowing them away as they climbed towards them, but they had more men than we had bullets. I'm sure of it. Below us, the machine gun rattled on, mowing down anything unfortunate enough to get in its line of fire.
Abby, look out!
Mom shrieked. I turned to see the skinny one, robed in his collection of human faces, bearing down on me. I managed to free one of my hands and grab the revolver from my belt. Before he could start adding another face to his cloak, I'd forced the barrel of the revolver against his belly and fired 4 times. His pink eyes went glassy, and I kicked him from the roof.
That's my girl,
Mama said, while cracking the butt of her rifle against the face of another one climbing her side of the roof. Suddenly, there was a bang, and I felt one of my arms go numb. I looked down to see a grinning hunger creature holding a smoking flintlock pistol hanging by one arm just on the edge of the building. It cackled wildly when it saw blood dripping from the wound. I stomped on its fingers and it fell to its death, laughing all the way. My left arm was useless, so the rifle was effectively useless too. Damn. I tore a strip of cloth from my skirt using the skinny one's knife and tied it around the wound before reloading my revolver. An arrow pierced the roof next to my face, creating an ugly thunk. I looked down to see a few hunger-mad bowmen dressed in t-shirts, khakis, and fake Native American headdresses. Before they could knock their arrows a second time, I fired my revolver at them, killing a few and winging others. I realized that now, with a bum arm, I was a sitting duck while reloading.
Oh, Abby, don't worry. Daddy's here.
I heard a sickly, ragged voice behind me say. I looked up and saw a tall, bearded man that I scarcely recognized, though he had a remarkable resemblance to Joseph. The revolver had only one shot loaded, but I raised it and fired from the crouching position. The beast dodged, the bullet just slamming into its shoulder rather than the intended target. A second later, I felt its boot connect with my face, slamming me off the roof. I managed to grab the ledge with my working arm, but my unloaded revolver fell to oblivion.
My little Abby,
The beast, who I assume must have been once my father, said.
Last time I saw you, you were just a baby. I saw you enter the world. Lydia and Hannah are mine. I'll have to ask your whole mother about that.
He took a rusted meat cleaver out of his belt and knelt down close. The strength in my arm was failing me, and I was contemplating whether falling to my death would be worse than whatever Daddy had planned.
Seeing as I saw you enter, baby, I think it's only fitting I see you leave.
He said, raising the cleaver.
Go play with God now, Abby. I'll be sending the rest of your sisters to play with you shortly.
I closed my eyes, waiting for the cleaver to sever my hand, but it never happened. I looked up and saw Mama with tears in her eyes standing behind Daddy and forcing the skinny man's knife into his neck.
Mary,
The creature said.
why are you doing this? I'm your husband.
Mama bit her bottom lip to stop herself from sobbing.
My husband's dead, you son of a bitch. And so are you.
She dragged the knife in a smooth arc across his throat. It tried to protest, but it just came out as gurgles as black blood formed a sticky apron on its chest. Mama put her boot on the creature's back and kicked it off the roof. "Mama! Help me!" I screamed, finding it harder and harder to cling onto the ledge. She grabbed my hand and pulled me back up.
Don't look behind you, sweetie. Just help me pull you up.
I heard high-pitched giggling behind me. It was hunger laughter, no doubt, but it was more familiar.
Don't look back, sweetie. Don't look back.
Mama pulled me back up onto the roof, and we ran for the hatch that led back into the house. While she was unlocking the hatch, I did something stupid. Damn, something really, really stupid. I stole a single glance over my shoulder. I saw them. Anne, Hannah, Lydia. They were clawing their way up the roof, cackling like demons. Their eyes now flesh pink. They've been taken by the hunger, just like the rest. Now they were coming for us.
Get in,
Mama said, standing next to the open hatch.
They're gone, Abby. We can't save them.
Time to die, Mama, you stupid bitch.
Lydia screamed, running towards us with a Bowie knife clenched in her little hand.
Die, die, die!
Without a single word, Mama lifted up her sawed-off and fired both barrels into Lydia's head. There was nothing left of her from the neck up afterwards. Anne and Hannah just laughed.
For God's sake, Abigail, get in!
I practically jumped down the hatch and Mama followed me, closing the hatch behind her and locking it with a heavy bolt. I could still hear fingernails scratching against the roof as we scaled the ladder back into our home. We found ourselves downstairs, shaken and still unable to come to terms with what had happened to Anne, Lydia, and Hannah. We found that Joanne and Eve had already bolted the front door. They depleted the machine gun's ammo. Our home may have been small, but it was well defended. The walls were thick and the doors were reinforced. It takes some serious firepower to break in.
Where are the other three?
Joanna asked, fear ringing clearly in her voice.
They didn't make it,
Mama said, her tone utterly neutral.
Oh, God.
Eve said, collapsing against the wall and sobbing.
We're gonna die.
Mama sighed and sat on the sofa, picking her knitting back up.
We've done all we can, girls. It's about an hour until morning. May as well get some sleep.
What difference does that make? Found myself asking in dismay. Mama looked up.
They don't like the light, honey. They'll disperse and head back into the forest to gather up their strength for the next attack. We may as well do the same.
As much as we tried, there was no sleeping that night. The hunger made sure of it. It barked and cackled and jeered through the walls, screaming and laughing with insanity. But Mama, as always, was right. Come the morning, the hunger was gone. Its last remnants had fled to the tree line, 2 of our 3 former sisters among them. It wasn't a victory. It never was. The best we could ask for was survival, and I suppose we should be grateful for having that, in spite of the loved ones we'd lost to the hunger. This story isn't about success. It's not a victory chant. It's a warning. We killed many of them. Their armies are still great, and they're only gonna get greater. We don't know when they'll come back, but if they come back tomorrow, there's no way in hell we got the firepower to take them on again. They'll chew through us, and then they'll come for everyone else. And if that's the case, I only have one sentiment to offer. Good luck.